Major funding for The Movie at the End of the World comes from the North Dakota Humanities Council, an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities.
I'm a fast dreamer, a dream champ, Rip Van Winkle of the century, still to wake up.
Tom McGrath, also known as Dream Champ, Crazy Horse, Tommy the Commie, Peasant Poet, Longshot O'Leary, and Tom Fool. Dreams of the time when poetry is not a necessary evil. Thomas Matthew McGrath.
Then I'm going to read a chunk of this long, interminable poem that I've been working on called Letter to an Imaginary Friend. And this has something to do with, going to work on a threshing machine when I was young and so on. Out of the whirring lamp-hung dusk, my mother calls. From the lank pastures of sleep, I turn and climb. From the leathery dark where the bats work, from the coasting, high all winter, all weather Christmas hills of my sleep. A worker has broken his wrist. The machine is whistling its brass-tongued rage, and the jack-booted weathers of autumn hiss and sing in the north. Blind, out of that labyrinthine sleep of childhood, I entered the brilliant alien arena, blind in the harsh light, into the age of men at the age of 9.
It's Labor Day at the 27th Annual Steam Threshers Reunion in Rolog, Minnesota. 50-odd years after he woke up to his first day of harvest work, McGrath was looking for a Nichols and Shepard steam engine, the kind his uncle had. No one's seen one this year.
There the engineer sat on the high driver, aloof as God. Filthy, a hunk of waste clutched in one gauntleted hand, in the other the oil can, beaked and long-necked as some exotic bird, wreathed in smoke, in the clatter of loose eccentrics, myself, straw monkey, jester at court.
In these parts of his epic poem in progress, Letter to an Imaginary Friend, McGrath is using parts of his own past to create a narrator character who dreams of a revolutionary miracle. Through the world travels and worldly travails of this would-be all-American dream champ, readers of Letter witness a felt history of America, from the Indians to the information age.
We seem to be a people that forgets its history about every 15 minutes. And as a result of that, we've had to do some god-awful things.
What was that I read a little description of your short history of culture in North Dakota about the Indians chasing the settlers.
Oh.
What was that about?
A short history of culture, yeah. Well, I had this notion of, there's a covered wagon train that's crossing the country, and the Indians start, naturally, they're supposed to attack, right? So they whip up the horses and start going like mad, and then they start throwing things overboard. And if I remember right, one of the things they threw overboard was the old grandfather clock, which deprives us of time and history. Then they threw over Shakespeare because, after all, and out goes literature. If they had a spinet, they would throw that out. And then the crockery and the kitchen arts go out. And finally, as the Indians get closer, they throw grandma overboard. Perhaps there's a pack of wolves going along with the Indians. And so family history is lost. And we all arrive in California and eat hamburgers the rest of our lives. And watch the Indians attacking the wagon trains. Well, that's an unorthodox version of things, but I think that something like that happened. I just jazzed it up a little bit. But that kind of thing did happen to us. And you see it especially in some immigrant families where the guy gets off the boat and that's the end of it. Because he's never heard from again in the old country. Probably couldn't write, but some of them, when they arrived in the new country, spent all their lives looking for their own footprints. That's a piece of a poem called The Legends. Arrived there, they gathered flint for arrowheads before they knew if there were men on the strange planet. When they came to the new world, some spent their whole lives looking for their own footprints. And so we are launched at last on the unknown river inland, a book of salt for our guide, wampum of hardened tears for trade goods, a lattice of dark crystals grows in the palm of my hand.
When do you think you decided you weren't going to be a farmer?
Oh, hell, I don't know. Fairly early. About the first time I had to do a really hard day's work, I decided I wasn't going to be a farmer.
Raised in an Irish Catholic family of 6 children and schooled in a one-room schoolhouse, McGrath came of age in the Great Depression, with farmers being forced off their land left and right, with penny sales and $1-a-day work. People worried the end of the world was at hand, a nightmare for a farm boy with ambitions to write.
I was trying to write then, but it was even there was a problem of getting books. Where the hell am I going to get books? Well, as it turned out, I made enough to make a start, and I got a little fellowship and money and so on. So I was launched.
After 40 years of wandering around the world, McGrath has high praise for the place he was born. Near Sheldon, North Dakota, about 40 miles from Fort Ransom, where McGrath's paternal grandfather homesteaded and the poet's father grew up. He calls this area the end of the world.
There's something about being on your home ground. I don't know that you draw any immediate values from it, but I do believe that a writer has got to know some place and really know it. He uses it as a test when looking at other places. It gives him comparisons. And I've been a lot of places without knowing them, you know, without having a sense that I really knew a place well. But here I know something of the history. I know the mores, I know the language, I know things like the weather, which is so important out here for us. And I believe without knowing something of that sort, and knowing it intimately, then there's something that's likely to be missing from the poems. Rain, gunfire, crows, mist, far, woods. The scalping knife is what my grandfather called it. I never could understand why he was always combing its long and many-colored hair. This is a poem about baking bread. It's called The Bread of This World. I don't know anything about the bread of the next world, but I hope it will be at least halfway as good. The bread of this world. On the Christmas white plains of the flowered and flowering kitchen table, the holy loaves of the bread are slowly being born, rising like low hills in the steepled pastures of light, lifting the prairie farmhouse afternoon on their arching backs. It must be Friday, the bread tells us, as it climbs out of itself like a poor man climbing up on a cross toward transfiguration. And it is a mystery, surely, if we think that this bread rises only out of the enigma that leavens the apocalypse of yeast, or ascends on the beards and beads of a rosary and priesthood of barley, those Friday heavens lofty. But we who will eat the bread when we come in out of the dark and the cold know it is a deeper mystery that brings the bread to rise. It is the love and faith of large and lonely women moving like flowery clouds in farmhouse kitchens that rounds the loaves and the lives of those around them. It is the love and faith of large and lonely women moving like flowery clouds in farmhouse kitchens that rounds the loaves and the lives of those around them. Just as we know it is hunger, our own and others, that gives all salt and savor to bread. But that is a workaday story, and this is the end of the week.
But this was also where the some kind of consciousness or awareness of labor troubles came to you.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Well, it was the first time, I guess, I got the sense that money was being made out of my sweat. Maybe not much money, you know, but when I was working on rigs, it's obvious that somebody's got to be making money. They're not going to be paying me for fun. It was something my father knew very well because he had been a worker also, though he was now in the position of being a farmer who occasionally hired somebody to work for him. When something would happen, like for instance, we'd hear of a strike on one of the rigs somewhere around, let's say, he had quite a different vision of what was going on from the other farmers. From the farmer's standpoint, these were just a bunch of bastards, troublemakers, foreign agitators, you know, communists, wobblies, etc. And he never took that view at all. He knew what the strike was about and what all strikes were about and so on. And so his attitude was different. And some of that I picked up as time went on. I began to see where I suppose that fairly early it came to me that the workers were primary in the system.
It is with an uneasy conscience McGrath shares his dream of starting a commune somewhere in the Dakota Territory. He does not want to be forgotten as a nostalgic fool on a beautiful hill. Dakota is everywhere, he says.
I think of Letter as a kind of a rescue mission. I want to rescue the past and then control it in order to do something about the future. Because if you don't know the past, you don't know that you can't. The future just becomes a matter of pragmatism. And that, I think, is it's an American curse to begin with, and very goddamn dangerous. Feathered in steam like a great tormented beast, the engine roared and laughed, dreamed and complained. Aloft on the shaking deck, half blind and deafened in the roaring dust, on the heaving back of the thresher, my neck blistered by sun and the flying chaff, my clothes shot full of thistles and beards, a gospel itch. Like a small St. Stephen, I turned the wheel of the blower, loading the straw rack. Was it hard? I don't know. It was terrifying. The whistle snapped and I ran. The thresher moaned on its glut. The Danaan rain of the wheat rained down. Hard? No. Everyone wanted to help me. My father, riding the grain tanks from the field, came in and helped me. It doesn't really quite end there, but that's where my mentor. You out there, so secret, what makes you think you're alone?
This shop is interesting because you get to do a lot of different things. We have to work together, you know, more than the other ones. Well, like in assembly, or if you're out in the press room, you know, those presses come down.
Tom is proud of his look-alike brother Martin. A machinist for a world-famous toy factory, Tom feels Martin's job has qualities that have been lost from many jobs: a sense of pride in his craft, an emotional feeling for tools.
I've said somewhere that work is either play or slavery, which is an overstatement, I guess, but there's a lot of work in which play can enter, and when it does, then it is good. Really, I suppose I see work as a whole lot of things, including ritual or ceremonial or even holy actions, because I do believe that work it can be a holy act, and that in some ways all kinds of work amounts to holy action, because we need the people who do it, no matter what they do, whether they're solitaries, you know, the bookkeeper, or whether they're a gang working on a particular job or whatever. There is a sacred quality to that. People used to feel that all the time when, in the days when the earth was sacred and so on, and when you planted your corn by the dark of the moon, and when you ritualized the harvest and so on. That's all been blown away, and yet I believe that it's still true. We rely on each other, ultimately. There's a level of solidarity that nobody recognizes, but it's still there.
You know, I would hate, like when I die, I wouldn't mind somebody using these tools, you know. But I wouldn't want them sold, you know. I really wouldn't. I've thought about that many times. I'd give them to somebody.
Myself here at this desk, the stars there in their own kind of cold and darkness. Workers of all worlds unite. I write things on everything, and I have, you know, a bag of stuff with parts written and lines and notes and so on. And usually I try to sort that out and I'll write a draft in my head and put it on down on a page, and then mess around with it, and then when it seems about right, or as right as I can get it for the moment, anyway, I put it down in here. It's not work in a way. Well, you know, as I've written someplace, it's play or slavery, and and for me, this writing is being enslaved to play, in a way, because I write not because I choose to write, but because I can't, it's harder for me to live if I don't write than if I do. So I have to work.
He supported his poetry with a lot of jobs. He's been fireman, Rhodes Scholar, legal aid, spy, two-time Bush Fellow, labor organizer and mediator, cabbie, welder, sculptor, Amy Lowell Fellow, Hornicle Miner, newspaperman, Air Force Sergeant, board marker in a stock brokerage, Guggenheim Fellow, and bum.
There was a great American gangster who said, when the fix is equal, justice must prevail. And
teaching has been one of his mainstays. Here he teaches a creative writing class at Morehead State University, the same place he was taught to teach.
Why is there a camera called the Argus? Look it up in the dictionary. What's that? The Bloody Dictionary.
People compare McGrath's letters to the world to Swift for its satire, to Pound for its intellect, to Dante for its politics, to Homer for its sonic qualities, to Cervantes for its moral search, to Rabelais for its ribaldry, to Joyce for its surreal cinematic style, to Marx for its history, to the Dakota Sioux for its vision quest, to Gordon for its ethics, and to Whitman for its all-American dream. In addition to a dozen books of verse, McGrath has written children's books, a little junk science fiction, a novel, and the scripts for over 20 movies, including animations, industrials, dramatic features, and documentaries.
Iron beasts in feathers of smoke and steam pounded through the sleepy villages. As the country contracted in the iron embrace of the railroads, appointments were kept, sometimes tragically. Train wrecks dramatize the railroad's need for accurate timekeeping.
McGrath has mixed feelings about his movie Moonlighting. Ever since his first, when he rewrote but didn't title Stakeout on Dope Street, he has found the writer ranks pretty low on the media totem pole. He complains he's never seen most of the movies he's been paid to write. The best, his script for Frederick Manfred's Conquering Horse, is still in the Dream Factory. Still, there are memorable moments.
It is only under the branchy tree of noon, in the round song of the colloquy of occupations, the building is put together. In that golden potlatch, in a confederation of wild talk, unstable as a union of Sioux Indians, the building goes up. A community of dream and sweat.
It is this common humanity we remember in our museums. Not queens in their alabastrine slumber, dreaming down 3,000 years in the remembering stone, nor even the occasional and necessary saint. Our arts and artifacts, our tools, our books and buildings, all are museums of a kind. They are the silent witnesses of our labor, our hardships, our victories, our defeats. In these we find the size, the shapes, the costs of our own experience. Work makes man free. Arbeit macht frei. Here is a museum which guards a memory that can hardly be held by the mind. This is a museum at Oswiecim, once a concentration camp, which the Germans called Auschwitz.
It's going to be a 3-hour quest.
No, I don't need I guess we're ready to begin our meeting. First of all,
it wasn't until 1980 that someone made a movie of a McGrath poem, rather than McGrath writing a movie for somebody else. You Can Start the Poetry Now satirizes the alienated poet and the alienated audience.
Our guest today is a poet, a versifier, a bard, what have you. And today he's going to read for us one of his compositions, a versification which, I might add, has been published. So, at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce him to you now.
I guess all I'm trying to say is I saw Crazy Horse die for a split level swimming pool in a tree house owned by a Pawnee Warner Brothers psychiatrist about 300 feet above.
You can Start the poetry now.
Above City Hall. Kind of sacred ground where they shot the great Buddha. Wild drags in the atomic parking lot, but no good gas. Seems I remember. Remember John Grass, University of North Dakota, 69. Did not complete his thesis. Sort of half-classed Indian. Was too busy fighting Custer to write. He wrote Last of the 10 Million Mohicanos. When the physicists began changing redskins to greenbacks, it wasn't.
Where's he from?
Wasn't Gaul who built all those slaveways after lifting the weight of the gilt hair? Custer's, wasn't it? Gaul or Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull or Rain in the Face wigged him. It was later they died on the tail fins. It makes you want to shoot horsepower capitalists who've done it.
You can start the poetry now.
Now! Who done it? It's between the gilt air and the surplus value grand cost of counting. Coup in the swimming pools, stolen from the Teton Sioux. First ones I ever saw with built-in jails. It's capitalism unlimited. The American Platonic year. I can't get straight. It's the white antelope they're using for money. It's the... It's the quarters and halves. Or maybe the whole antelope buck that gets me. It's the cutting up of the buffalo bread. It's all them goddamn swimming pools full of shot horses. It's Christ, Indians, and revolutionaries charging full tilt at the psychiatrist couches and being blasted with the murderous electrical hot missionary money of hell by installments. It's all of us pining and starving, surrounded by the absolute heavenly pemmican charisma that Geronimo invented. It's
McGrath's maverick career has taken such a toll in his personal life, he prefers to leave the story of his private Vietnam to the crows after he's gone. Tom says he's not sure he could have survived without his son, Tomasito.
All those years alone, married to the intense, uninteresting life. And until you came, Tomasito, I didn't even know my name. It's called Round Song. My dead father comes back in the shape of my little son, and I sing him to sleep with his songs still in my own child's ear.
Tomasito, what happened?
I used to think I might like to be reincarnated as a horse, but a wild horse, not a work horse. But I've changed my mind. I've decided I want to be reincarnated as some kind of a tree, probably, or a flower, possibly, or I don't know, not a horse, I think.
Whoa! 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 Hey, whoa!
My little son comes running with open arms. Sometimes I can't bear it. Father, did I too open your heart almost to breaking? Would you like to be a horse next time around?
Well,
in reincarnation?
Well, I don't know.
Have somebody ride you around all day long?
No, I really don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think I'd rather be maybe an amoeba.
You wouldn't be one long. You'd become two, and pretty soon you'd be an extended family.
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, to have several different parts of yourself all over. And then to go have a little reunion with the rest of you.
That wouldn't be bad. One of you could go abroad, and the other one could stay home and do the chores. Look at this guy.
Oh, God. Sounds like a hog.
This is Crazy Horse says. Your parents set a great price on you, but I would steal all the ponies of the crows for the sound of your flute once more.
Somehow that sounds like Washington Irving.
Yeah, Rip Van Winkle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we're mostly Rip Van Winkles.
Why don't you read that little one about the owls building another room?
Yeah. All month long, I heard the owls pushing their heavy lumber through the dark. They are building another room on the night. Get it?
I've read it over.
Well, I don't understand it myself, but I thought maybe somebody might. That's a revolutionary poem, I think.
Is poetry reaching the audience that ought to be reached?
Oh, well, probably. Nobody knows what audience it ought to reach anymore. Once upon a time, the audience for poetry was the whole community, tribe, or clan, or whatever it was. All these things have disappeared now. So poetry reaches people who can hear. And as Christ said, or somebody like that, he who has ears, let him hear. And so maybe it's reaching just the ones that it ought to reach. I don't know. But the Wobblies used to say, among other things, agitate the agitators, educate the agitators. It's like all these shrieks and cries that go up, you know. And eventually, if there are enough of them, other people will start hearing them, I think. And poetry is a part of that. It's a way of, it's a sophisticated scream, something like that. Behold, friends, once more the revolution has performed its famous disappearing act. And never before has one been preceded by so many prophets, by so many holy books, all in translation, by so many young men with long hair, so many poets with short breath.
We don't want to fight anymore, but if we have to fight again, it'll be to take these steps.
I should really know how to start a fire. I was an Eagle Scout when I was a kid.
And the elephant bells, ooh la, and incense, and the flowers. The flowers, alas, which never found the barrel of the gun that power grows out of.
Inside that box was all that was left of my son. A burned, broken body. What did he die for?
And now the president reborn out of the mystical body of the one and universal voting machine takes off his mask. A thick and heavy darkness like rust is collecting in the amplified guitars.
1, 0. These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
The president will make the airplane fly. He will make the Grateful Dead truly grateful. The president is casting the other I Ching. A hard rain is falling. The roads are icing up. But in every drop of the rain, the sailors of the Potemkin wake. In every society that's existed and exists, creates alienated people, because there hasn't been a system yet that's completely tolerable to the human spirit. Maybe that's not a possibility.
All his life, McGrath has tried to turn what he's come to call his unaffiliated far-left political feelings into actions. To take only one example, just before World War II, he was organizing dock workers on the waterfront in New York City. Like today, it was a time of corrupt unions and fascist movements. It was the war at home.
It was a kind of work where it was a good thing if you could run fast, because there were goons, longshore goons and Teamster goons, which would have been bad enough. But beyond that, it was a time when there were substantial fascist movements among working class people. The best known one at that time was probably an outfit called the Christian Front. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They were followers of Father Coughlin. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But he had a large following, violently anti-Semitic, anti-communist, anti-CIO, which was taken to be owned by the communists, etc., the whole thing. So that there were, aside from goons that were getting paid to keep the streets clear of the likes of us, there are also these freelancers who might be anywhere, You couldn't spot them. And who might walk up behind you and lay your head open with a longshoreman's hook, as happened to a friend of mine. So it was that kind of thing. It was a nervous-making sort of thing. There was a real war that was going on there, and people were killed in it. And I probably would have continued in that, and probably would have become some kind of a professional organizer, I suppose, except that the war came along, and then I went into the Army.
McGrath wrote the next poem, Gone Away Blues, from his book, The Movie at the End of the World, while blacklisted out of teaching in Los Angeles in the McCarthy 50s. It is a satiric and surreal declaration of independence.
Sirs, when you are in your last extremity, when your admirals are drowning in the grass-green sea, when your generals are preparing the total catastrophe, I just want you to know you cannot count on me. I have ridden to hounds through my ancestral halls. I have picked the eternal crocus on the ultimate hill. I have fallen through the window of the highest room, but don't ask me to help you, 'cause I never will. Sirs, when you move that map pin, how many souls must dance? I don't think all those soldiers have died by happenstance. The inscrutable look on your scrutable face I can read at a glance, and I'm cutting out of here at the first chance. I have been wounded climbing the second stair. I have crossed the ocean in the hull of a live wire. I have eaten the asphodel of the dark side of the moon. But you can call me all day and I just won't hear. Oh, patriotic mister with your big ear to the ground, sweet old curly scientist wiring the birds for sound. Oh, lady with a Steuben glass heart and your heels so rich and round, I'll send you a picture postcard from somewhere I can't be found. I have discovered the grammar of the public good. I have invented a language that can be understood. I have found the map of where the body is hid, and I won't be caught dead in your neighborhood. Oh, hygienic inventor of the bomb that's so clean. Oh, lily-white senator from East Turnip Green. Oh, celestial mechanic of the money machine. I'm going someplace where nobody makes your scene. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Adios, au revoir, so long. Sayonara, do svidania, ciao. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Thank you. Very goofy, huh? That was a goofy poem.
I know, it was
fun. Taking a cue from Bertolt Brecht, everything or nothing, all of us or none, McGrath has never given up serving in the revolution for the round dance, the Golden Land, Big Rock Candy Mountain, Pie in the Sky, Utopia, Eden, the Happy Hunting Ground, the Fifth World, Paradise, Cloud 9, Seventh Heaven, the Promised Land, Hereafter.
So, what a poet does every day is it's like Penelope. Each day, Penelope worked at night, but each day, the motherfuckers who create the language weave their goddamn, are warping and woofing and making their magical blanket through which which they're going to hang up in front of you and tell you this is what the world is. And every night the poets sit down and very carefully try to unweave that whole thing so that in the morning, some morning, when we're all in sync, you'll wake up, the language will be brand new. We won't know what to say to each other. Instead of saying moo, moo, which is good morning in contemporary American, you know. How are you? I'm fine. Moo, moo, moo. Somebody will get up and say, I caught this morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dappled dawn, drawn falcon in his riding. Or say, he riseth, he shineth, the heavens are rolled asunder. What would we say? Leap out of the tomb, you know, roll back the rock. Well, the groundhog looks at his shadow. Might go back in and sleep for a while, depending. This is one of the myths of Christ that I've just been writing. But if the language were new, you see, if it weren't so beat up and worn out, and well, everything we'd say would be a piece of a poem, wouldn't it? And that's the kind of world we want. That's real communism. When we own the language, which will probably be the last thing to be owned by the people. It's easier to take over General Motors. You know, you got to take the dictionaries, destroy the goddamn things. Start over again. Morning spells light in the language of alarm clocks. The streets bulge with ambition and duty, inhaling the populace out of exhausted houses. The drowsy lion of money devours their calendars in an absent-minded orgy of universal togetherness. Meanwhile, back among the ranch-type ramblers, the television set loosens the apron strings of housewives temporarily widowed by that same quotidian lion of hard labor. Now they are carried away by bow-legged heroes to covered wagon living rooms of the open-fire range, where the masked man turns out to be an old lover. Somewhere in the kitchen, the coffee is chuckling like Pandar. Somewhere, the factories shake in the fists of the workers. A lot of the poems that I've written have a good deal of cursing going on in them, you know, invective and opposition and outrage and so on. That's true. Anger and so on. And I've had satisfaction in doing that. But it's true that a poem like Praises is a poem that I feel closer to. I really would like to praise more than to damn. But as I say, it's turned out that because of the times, and I suppose because of the kind of person I am, I've had to do a lot of cursing in my life, more than ideally I think I'd have liked. More than I wanted to do, or more than ideally I would want to do if I had it to do over again. The vegetables please us, all modes and virtues, the demure heart of lettuce inside its circular court, baroque ear of quiet under his rustling house of lace pleases us. And the bold strength of the celery, its green Hispanic shout, its exclamatory confetti, and the analog that is onion, Ptolemaic astronomy and tearful allegory of the Platonic circles of his inexhaustible soul. Oh, and straightforwardness. In the labyrinth of cabbage, the infallible rectitude of homegrown mushroom under its crown of silence like a papal hat, all these please us. and the syllabus of the corn, that wampum, its golden roads leading out of the wigwams of its silky and youthful smoke. The nobility of the dill, cool in its silences and cathedrals. Tomatoes, 5-alarm fires in their musky barrios, peas asleep in their cartridge clips, beets blood, colonies of the imperial cauliflower, and the Buddha-like seeds of the pepper turning their prayer wheels in the green gloom of their caves. All these we praise. They please us always, these smallest virtues. All these earth-given, and the heaven-hung fruit also, as instance, banana, which continually makes angelic ears out of sour purses, or the whiny abacus of the holy grape on its cross of alcohol, or the peach with its fur like a young girl's. All these we praise. The winter in the flesh of the apple and the sun, domesticated under the orange's rind, we praise. By the skin of our teeth, persimmon and pawpaw's constant affair with gravity, and the proletariat of the pomegranate inside its leathery city. And let us praise all these as they please us. Skin, flesh, flower, and the flowering bones of their seeds, from which come orchards, bees, honey, flowers, love's language, love, heart's ease, poems, praise.
Like indie world.